honestly a little bit more exciting as far as I'm concerned. So first, oops, sorry about that. Just a little bit about Vote America. We are a goal-oriented, tactic-agnostic voter mobilization organization, and the goal-oriented, tactic-agnostic is one of the primary distinguishing features of our organization. There are plenty of organizations that are built around a tactic, and they will keep using that tactic long after it has stopped working. But every year, at the end of the year, when we're doing a debrief, we say, like, what can we do that's better next year? Like, what's available now that wasn't available in the past? Or even like have enough other groups adopted this tactic that we can now move on from it. And a little kind of hilarious detail about me. Those unsolicited text messages that you get that are driving you crazy, I am one of the jerks who helped popularize those in 2016 when no one else was doing that. I was like, I think this would be a really good way to register voters. And it was. And now everyone and her mother sends those text messages, and they're driving us all crazy. And we tend to not do that anymore. Also, under the hood, Vote America is actually four distinct legal entities. There's Vote America, the nonpartisan nonprofit that most of you know, Vote America Action Fund, which is our C4 that lets us do advocacy work, Vote America LLC, which is how we license our software to other organizations, and Vote America PAC, which was brand new in 2025. And we started a PAC just kind of to see how difficult it was to start a pack. And given that it took fewer than 30 minutes, I feel confident saying that we really need to abolish the pack structure. Um, Okay, first, I'm sorry, y'all. I realize I have to start this with a math lesson because I spend all of my time talking about math. And a good friend asked me a few weeks ago, like, what exactly a point is? Because she was just hearing that a candidate won by a point, and she was like, does that mean 10,000 voters? Like, what does that mean? Uh, so points are the word points is actually short for percentage points, and it is just the difference between two numbers that were both expressed as percentages. And there's actually no complicated math here. People always think that calculating that dealing with percents is complicated. It isn't. Um, so these are just four recent races, and I was looking up what percentage of the vote the winner and the loser got in each. And so when we discuss margin of victory, we just subtract. And so you can see these were like pretty hot races that everyone spent a lot of time and money on recently. And the New York City mayoral race was actually the closest race. All the other ones were decided by well over 10 points, which we would all consider a really decisive margin of victory. The other way that points come up is when we're talking about the effectiveness of certain tactics. So, what we do, they're called randomized controlled trials, where you have your target group that you treat with, robocalls or unsolicited text messages or mail that pressures them or opted in text messages. And then you have a group that you don't contact at all. And then you subtract the difference and you use that to determine the effectiveness of various tactics, also presented as points. And the reason I've been thinking about this a lot recently is that a lot of the dominant tactics in the space, if not most of the dominant tactics in the space, provide a really modest boost in turnout. Like these numbers on this page have to do with like a midterm election, which is a lower salience election. So we get a higher boost. But you can see that these are pretty small, whereas elections tend to be decided by much larger margins. And as we're going into 2026, one thing we're saying a lot at Vote America is that we just don't want to spend our time or our money on tactics that produce a measurable boost, but one that isn't actually meaningful. And I realize this is nerdy please follow up with me later if you have questions. And while I think that everyone in this space does great work, I think that collectively we're still spending too much time and too much money on things that aren't actually meaningful. And then this is a fun and very wild fact. It is really hard to find any research on the efficacy of TV ads, which is where easily 70% of election spending goes. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars every cycle. First, the median age of a broadcast TV viewer is now over 65, and those happen to be the most partisan and least persuadable people in America. But also, broadcast TV has no impact whatsoever on turnout and only the smallest shift when it comes to persuasion. Like this is just a tactic I personally wouldn't invest money in and certainly wouldn't invest the billions of dollars that we spend. I think that there's a potential argument to be made that like a certain amount of broadcast TV is just table stakes. But beyond that, we really are setting money on fire. And the reason people are still spending so much money on broadcast TV is elections are a big business. And media buyers are compensated based on how much money they spend. So they're incentivized to spend more money. I'll send the deck to you guys afterwards so you can read the evidence. It's this bordering on criminal that we still spend so much money on broadcast TV. Okay, so I spent a lot of time in 2025, like trying to actually figure out what happened with young voters last year, because there was almost immediately this narrative that there was like a huge shift to the right among young voters, meaning that young voters actually started to vote for Republicans. And I've seen a version of this chart almost immediately after the election. And it shows, you can see that in 2020, 61% of young people voted for Democrats and only 55% in 2024. And then this red line was what everyone was talking about. They're saying, look at that, 39% of young people voted for the Republican, and then that went up to 45%, and that is a 6 point. This is where this coming from, boost in support for Republicans among young people. And the narrative almost immediately was that people should stop investing in young people and should stop registering people to vote, which is a crazy thing to hear from anyone who works in the democracy space, especially because this analysis completely ignored the almost 55% of young people who just didn't vote at all. Um, and this took a while to do this analysis because we need census data and we needed turnout data from both Catalyst and Target Smart in order to do like the full analysis. But you can see here that what happened with young people is it's not, both political parties lost support. The loss of support was more noticeable among Democratic candidates than Republican candidates. But it's not that young people actually voted for Trump, is that they just didn't vote at all. And so at Vote America, we say there's three major political parties in the United States. There's the Democrats, there's the Republicans, and there's the couch. And support for the couch soared last year, but there's no evidence that young people are more conservative than they used to be. And that message is coming primarily from partisan groups that ignored young people and just ran bad campaigns. So if you only take one thing from this presentation, please walk away knowing that young people are in no way more conservative than they used to be. Um, in fact, kind of the opposite. This is exit polling data from four different major polling groups. You know, we've got Pew, Catalyst, which is the voter file, Edison. The cooperative election study is actually a joint study of like 15 universities. And not only are young people not more Republican than they used to be, they remain the most Democratic voting bloc we had. And so it is both incorrect and potentially very stupid for partisan groups to abandon the youngest voters. That would be bad. Um, and then we did a briefing last week, actually asked what we knew about the people who didn't vote. So enhanced ideology score is modeling done by, I think this one is done by Target Smart, and it includes both party affiliation, which young people are a lot less likely to have, and demographic factors. A higher score means that you're more likely to vote for the Democratic candidate. The blue line is young people. These are young people who didn't vote, and the young people who didn't vote are overwhelmingly progressive. Like most people consider anything above 50 to be progressive. We only look at like over 70 as progressive. And you can see not only more, are they very progressive, but they're significantly more progressive than older people who didn't vote. So let's please drop that narrative that young people are conservative. Okay, so moving on to more fun stuff. We have several things that we're really excited about for next year, and I actually don't have time to talk about all of them, so I just chose my three favorites, and I'm going to dive into those. And also, this is a chart that shows the potential boost for turnout for various tactics. And the three that we're really focused on are the ones that are all the way to the left. College media, pre-registration, and PAV, which stands for permanent absentee voting. And I've produced hundreds of pages of academic research over the years on every single one of these tactics except in-person canvassing. Feel really confident in this analysis. Okay, so first, uh, futurevoter.com, which is a pre-registration program. There are 16.4 million high schoolers, like right now, or as of August, who will be eligible to vote in the 2028 election. And every one of them can register to vote before they turn 18, which almost no one knows about. Like, I didn't know that this was available in every state until last year. And generally, if I don't know things, a lot of other people in the space uh, don't. So we did some research and we confirmed that only 12% of teens are pre-registered to vote, and only 11 states require high schools to actually make a good faith effort to pre-register students. But pre-registering students, meaning getting them registered before they're 18, has a huge impact on turnout. When you compare young people who register before 18 to young people who register after, turnout among the group that pre-registered is 6 to 13 points higher, which is such an insane boost that it would be almost impossible to find something that is that effective in increasing turnout. And we've actually done a ton of work this year on the pre-register program. So first, we own futurevoter.com, and we've built an entire website, including an application that guides teenagers through the process. And we built this in partnership with a bunch of young people so they could give us guidance, such as you can't assume that we know our social security numbers. We actually don't know our social security numbers. We probably have to ask our moms. So there's like true, like, do you know your social security number? Like, no. And the next thing is like, is your mom around or your parent? Can you ask her? So it's just really well done. We made the application embeddable so that other orgs can use it on their websites and as part of their programs, totally free to use. Um, We've already got like signed partnership with some of like the most prominent youth organizations, Do Something, Voters of Tomorrow, Turn Up, Feel Good Action. And they've been working with us all year to like use the tools and test them and give feedback. I don't want to jinx anything, but we have had really promising conversations with a lot of groups and companies that aren't in the voter mobilization space but do serve this market, because people are hungry to be involved and they want to do things that are impactful and nonpartisan. And the more people we talk to, like the more other groups in the space, more academics, we find that people are so excited about this. And really, there isn't a concerted nationwide effort to do pre-registration. So we're forming a coordinating body so that we can involve as many people as possible. Like we certainly should not be the only group investing resources. The second thing that we're back to doing, y'all. Some of you guys have heard me talk about this. So, college students are obviously a really important voting bloc, and they're really diverse and they're really progressive. And educational attainment in this country is directly correlated with partisanship. We are a nonpartisan organization, but facts are facts. When students vote, they vote for Democrats. And the important thing about students is they actually don't need to be convinced to vote. They need to be taught how to vote because they've never voted before. And then they need relentless reminders to actually cast ballots because elections are during finals week, which those of us who have not been in school for a while forget. Um, and Again, a lot of you guys have heard me talk about college media over the years. So we've been running college media programs since 2017. And what I mean by college media is that the schools themselves own the media channels. We have to work directly with the schools to place the ads. The administration needs to approve our ads and our messaging. Um, and almost any form of media you can think of exists on college campuses. We started with just the newspapers by putting full page ads on the back of college newspapers, but they also send emails and they send text messages and they have billboards and they have transit ads. And what we do is we just fully saturate a college with messaging about when to vote, where to vote, what to bring, and like a place to learn more about candidates. And we don't endorse candidates, but we will, make it clear if a candidate is pro-choice or anti-choice. Um, and the most common reasons that students don't vote is almost all informational. They miss the registration deadlines. They're registered back home because they don't know that they have dual residency. Um, they didn't know that they have to go to a designated polling place. They didn't know that they have to bring ID. And these are all informational barriers that we can clear. And we've been running these programs so long that we ran them in partnership with a bunch of academics, and we saw anywhere from a 2 to 8 point boost in turnout. In a midterm year, we expect a 6 point boost. And I skipped this bullet. I probably shouldn't have. It's the first one. It's actually kind of hard to reach young people because they block ads online. And when I say 47% of young adults haven't watched broadcast TV in the past year, I actually mean that 51% of all people under 50 haven't seen a single minute of broadcast TV. Like, we're just spending tons of money on advertising that doesn't reach young people, but they're not hard to reach. We know where they are. They're on college campuses. Um, and so in 2020, you guys may remember there was a pandemic, which meant there were no field programs. So we ran this pretty large college media program. We didn't buy physical inventory unless we were certain that the students were still at school. We did almost entirely a digital program, but it was the only program running on college campuses because that's normally where we send field organizers. And we had record high youth turnout. And in 2024, we worked so hard to like raise funds for this program. We know it works. We know that it reaches like a really critical block of young people. We also know that if a young person votes in 3 elections in a row, they become a lifelong voter. So we knew that that this would really pay off long term. Like we could help people form good voting habits, and then they would continue to vote. And we made very hard pitches to a lot of very prominent, well-funded org. And I mean, we had one PAC say that college was covered because they invested $250,000 in it, which is 1/16th of what we spent um, in 2020. And A fully funded program, it would have cost $22 million. I know that seems like a lot of money, but that would have changed the outcome of the presidential election. And that's less than 1% of what the Harris campaign and the super PAC spent to lose. They spent $2 billion. Dollars. They didn't win. It was a bad campaign. And we should really think about moving our money to more effective tactics because it would be nice to live in a democracy moving forward. Okay, and then the last program I'm going to talk to you guys about, and it's super nerdy, but bear with me. So, first, this slide really upsets people and it shouldn't. Over 80% of Americans are registered to vote because of a decades long campaign to really make structural changes, like remove structural roadblocks. We passed the Motor Voter Act in 1992, which means people are automatically registered to vote when they go to the DMV. Half the states have same day registration, so you can register to vote on election day just by bringing a government issued ID. About half the states have automatic voter registration, not just at the DMV. So we have made all these really important legislative changes and they've paid off. I mean, it's actually not 80% of people are registered to vote. It's 86% of people are registered to vote. So that means in the presidential election, more than half of people who didn't register are already registered. Next year, it's going to be, I can't do the math, about 66% of people who won't vote are already registered, and it's about 80% of people. Um, I'm sorry, math is escaping me right now, but you guys could see this chart. If you really want to increase turnout, you have to focus on registered voters who aren't casting ballots. It doesn't mean that voter registration isn't important. It doesn't mean that we don't have to make sure movers re-register to vote or that people turning 18 are registered to vote. It means the floor has risen considerably over the past 30 years. I'm sure there was a point in the 80s where like only half of people were registered to vote, but that's just not the case right now. And going all the way back to when I was running long distance voter in 2008, I have focused, and that means the orgs that I run have focused on making sure that registered voters actually cast ballots because that would increase turnout by so much. And it's one step. They're already registered to vote. They've already voted at least once. They know the process. You just need to like clear some roadblocks for them. So we stumbled on permanent absentee voting. We were just looking into it in general. Because first we were looking at the states that have universal vote by mail. That's like all the West Coast states, and that means that you get your ballot in the mail automatically. The state just mails it to you. And the universal vote by mail states generally have higher turnout than the swing states. And it's not that anyone spends any money on us, it's that our ballots show up and then all we have to do is return them. But that's not an apples to apples comparison because the universal vote by mail states want you to vote, and the swing states often make it very difficult for people to vote. It's one of the things that makes them swing states. Um, so we started looking a little deeper, and there are 9 states that have permanent absentee voting. And what this means is you have to sign yourself up to vote by mail, but once you do, you receive your ballot in perpetuity, which is cool. So first, we just started to look at the difference in turnout between the people who are receiving their ballots in the mail and the people who are voting at the polls in these states. This is Arizona, obviously an important state, and this is bananas. Bananas would be my technical term for this. I mean, we're talking like a 30-point boost in the people who receive their ballots in the mail, like absolutely bananas. And then we looked at Montana, another permanent absentee voting state, and that's a 20-point boost in turnout. But we were like, okay, this is not like rigorous enough analysis for us because it's entirely possible that the people who are signing up for permanent absentee voting are just savvier and more informed and therefore more likely to take advantage of this. So We worked with Professor Scott Minkoff. He's a long-term partner of us to do multivariate regression analysis. It's complicated. And basically, this means controlling for all demographic factors, including voter propensity score. There's still a 13-point boost in turnout among people who receive their ballots in the mail. And that boost is caused by receiving your ballot in the mail. And I mean, we were so thrown off by these results that like Scott checked his map twice, our data scientist checked her map twice, they checked the math against each other. I mean, this is just amazing. So, and yeah, this is an explanation of what you just saw, but basically this chart right here, I mean, this is you could invest your dollars in it. You can like put money on this. Like this is the boost caused just by getting your ballot in the mail. Um, and so that's going to be one of the programs we're running this year. Sorry, next year. We are actually going to run hyper targeted recruitment efforts to get registered voters in these 9 states signed up for permanent absentee voting with the ultimate goal of encouraging these states to move to universal vote by mail because it really reduces administrative costs and it really increases turnout. I'm almost done, y'all. Thank you for hanging in with me. I know this was pretty nerdy. Uh, so something else that we've started to say this year at Vote America, really started to say, is that you can't solve chronic problems with temporary solutions, and turnout is chronically low in the United States. And the solutions that we pursue, the collective we, not just Vote America, are basically short-term marketing campaigns designed to get someone elected, but that's that's never going to solve the turnout problem. Like no amount of marketing an individual candidate is going to clear the structural barriers in the United States. And even if they work to get one particularly charismatic candidate to vote, that's not going to persist beyond an individual election. And we don't want to do that anymore. We only want to spend our resources and your investment on tactics that we know will persist beyond a single election. And so we just say this all the time now that you can't solve chronic problems with temporary solutions. And really, partisan groups, they're temporary. They don't exist after an election. And we also can't rely on candidate charisma to increase turnout. There are over 500,000 elected officials in the United States, and most of them are as interesting as a bowl of cream of wheat. And that's fine because people should participate in our democracy, even if the elected official is boring. Um, and I got a recent example of that. I think Zohran Mamdani in New York, incredibly charismatic candidate, and New York had like the highest turnout it's had in forever, and that was like 50% of voters, and we're celebrating that. So we need to focus on some more nuts and bolts solutions to increasing turnout. I'm going to stop talking very soon. And I'm just going to say that we're really good at what we do at Vote America. I know you're not supposed to say that about yourself. I'm not really sure why. But we've been ahead of the curve for a really long time now. And as one of our partners at another organization says, whatever Vote America does 1 year, everyone else will be doing 4 to 8 years from now. So I'm just going to call it like 4 years from now, everyone's going to be working on pre-registration and everyone's going to be working on permanent absentee voting because we're going to test the bejesus out of these tactics and figure out what works. And we're going to share it with everyone else. And then hopefully we're going to move on. So I think Lindsay has probably been dropping a donate link into the Zoom all along. Uh, Please, you know what? Please give as much as 2025 has hurt. Like you should give until you feel like just you're in pain because 2026 just needs to go better and we need to do a better job getting people out to vote. And I think that more Americans, I think that while issues divide us, our values unite us. And when turnout increases, we're just more likely to elect candidates who share our values. And if you're in the position of donating stock or crypto or from your IRA, please just email finance@voteamerica.org and we can walk you through that, especially because end of year is upon us, and a lot of the charitable giving laws are changing. Um, so if you've been making pretty generous donations, you probably want to do it before the end of the year. And I'm going to actually stop sharing, and I think we have uh, time for some questions. I'm going to just start at the top with James asking, do we encourage students to vote in their home state if their vote counts more? James, in 2010, I actually worked with a professor at Northwestern and then Tufts, like their program to run this like vote back home campaign with college students. So to get them to register and then to sign up to vote absentee and then to actually return their ballots. And we had an 85% success rate with that, but it was so labor intensive. It just was. And we find that students are a lot more likely to successfully cast a ballot if we have them vote where they go to school. And also, there's plenty of students that attend school in swing states, and we encourage them to vote there. So mainly, we really aggressively let students know that they have dual residency and that it's their choice where they register to vote. And when states try to pull shenanigans and keep students from voting, we are always prepared to sue. And also, I can see Barbara Smith Warner from the National Vote at Home Institute is on the call. They are some of our closest collaborators. And she's letting us know that Maine is going to be passing permanent absentee voting in January 2026. And hopefully, we'll get to do a joint project with the National Vote at Home Institute around permanent absentee voting. Linz, I can't actually see if there are other questions, but you guys should feel free to ask questions. Okay, now I see the Q&A. Margaret Gupta, we actually historically do work in Florida. It depends on who's funding the work. Um, for some reason, people have decided that Florida is not a competitive state. That's a weird conclusion. Uh, Florida is Florida has worked really hard to disenfranchise people with felony convictions, which is something like 20% of all men of color in Florida. I think that if the Florida electorate actually matched the Florida population, that would not be a swing state. But we love doing work in Florida. There's so many colleges there. Uh, Keely Stokes is asking us about the movement to get rid of voting by mail. Good Lord. And I know that Donald Trump thinks that he can just declare things, that he can say that voting by mail doesn't exist. Uh, Election administration is done at the state level. And we've even seen Republican secretaries of state respond to those suggestions using choice words. Um, because vote by mail, right up until Donald Trump, was just embraced by both sides of the aisle. And actually, for a really long period, it was primarily Republicans that voted by mail. Some of you guys know this. I ran an org called Long Distance Voter from 2008 to 2016 when I rebranded it as vote.org. And so much of our inbound traffic actually came from like GOP.com and various RNC groups. But yeah, if states actually do try to restrict vote by mail, we'll sue, along with the National Vote at Home Institute. They're on this call. Khalil Thompson, yeah, we're gonna either send out the deck or we'll just post it online. The deck is meant to be shared. Um, We definitely have a few minutes left for people to ask questions, and I'll answer any question. I'm not very shy. Um, and if not, uh, no one else? God, you guys are going so easy on me. We did a preview of this last week, and I was grilled by some of our donors. Um, if people don't have questions, then I'm happy to give us all a few minutes back of our day. And, it's my job to ask you to invest some of your hard-earned resources in our work. We've got the team, we've got the expertise, and we have programs that really do scale with capital. Um, and I realize I've been kind of quiet this year. I have to be honest, I was really pissed off all year. It's really irritating to watch people spend billions of dollars and have nothing to show for it. And that's billions of dollars that we could have spent actually improving people's lives instead of running broadcast TV ads. But I'm back. I am so excited for next year. We're going to do good work. I think a lot of groups are going to do good work. I just think we're going to do the best work. So please think of us when you're doing your end of year giving. And I'm super easy to reach. I'm Deborah at voteamerica.org. Email me anytime. Also, I love talking on the phone. So if you guys want to talk to me, just let me know. Um, One last question. Is there any way to fight against the waste of broadcast TV ads? No, I have not found a way because elections are big business and most of these decisions are made uh, by consultants in DC. Like, look, campaigns are temporary. They are temporary organizations, right? So if you're running for office, like you don't really have time to you know, do these nationwide search for the best people. So what you do is you hire the political consultants who like step in and they tell you what to do. And what they tell you to do is buy broadcast TV ads. I mean, nobody rocks the boat because the boat is filled with money. And I do think eventually that will change when we actually like pass some laws to get some money out of politics. But as long as we're spending billions on elections, we're going to spend billions on TV ads because that's just like the easiest place to put money. And I do, I'm an optimist. I think one day, like enough of us will be like, hey, what are we doing here? Or I don't know, maybe we'll somehow restrict spending. And when people have fewer dollars to spend, they'll spend them smarter. But for me personally, I just don't give money to candidates anymore because I know where their money goes. So give your money to groups that aren't super PACs and who aren't candidates. And if any candidates on this call, I'm sorry, but I haven't donated directly to a candidate in years because I know where their money goes. Keely, you're going to get me canceled with that one, but that's okay. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be in touch again. And we're going to have briefings more regularly. My bad mood has passed, and I'm back to wanting to talk to all of you lovely people on a more regular basis. Thanks so much, everybody.